Iron Lung is a triumph that deserves to be celebrated, especially in the context of the fact that it is a indie produced, written, funded, directed, and acted film. I just saw it over the weekend, and I've been chewing on it for the past couple days, and honestly, I feel like I'm ready to talk about it. And this is not something I typically do. YouTube's probably going to punish the heck out of this video, so do me a favor, and if you enjoy it, hit that like button, because this is not something I typically post, and I'm sure YouTube's going to let me know. But anyway, let's get into it. I think this movie is something that, man, I went into it with very low or tempered expectations, not because I didn't have faith in Markiplier, but just because of everything stacked against it. Again, being completely self-funded, written, all that, you don't really know what you're going to get. I do have faith in Mark as a creative, and so I do know that he has a high, let's say, standard. But other than that, I had not watched anything else he had been in besides, his In Space with Markiplier series. But if you're completely unfamiliar with Markiplier, if you're completely unfamiliar with Iron Lung, I do think you would benefit by going to check out the Let's Play he did of the game a couple years ago. The game's been out for a while, and he did an initial playthrough back when it came out. A lot has changed since then. There's been a couple lore updates, and so the game has kind of fleshed out itself, but also I do think you would just benefit by kind of having a general sense of what's going on, because if there's one thing this movie could have done maybe a little bit better, was maybe a little exposition in regards to the character and the world and what's happened. But we'll get into that in just a minute. What I want to get into is what I was supremely surprised by, and it's the overall quality of the film, the look, the sound. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the opening shot is CGI. But honestly, if it is CGI, it's pretty decent, and it did not bother me at all. It did not take me out of the experience. Like sometimes it looked real. So it may have been real, I don't know. But the CGI throughout the rest of the movie was actually really impressive. I do think a lot of what was done in this movie was practical, and to its credit, because the practical effects obviously are not only easier to pull off in some manner, but it really helped the world and the character and everything feel more believable. And so I think that was a benefit to the movie. Now, when the limited CGI that is there does come into play, honestly, it was impressive. It was good. I never once thought, ooh, that looks rough. Never. So the first thing that I would say is the CGI was surprisingly decent. The second thing is the sound design in this movie I thought was excellent. I thought the different sounds that you hear inside the submarine, or the submersible, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's technically a submarine. I would think it would qualify, but regardless. The sounds you hear outside in the water, oh my gosh, it's very eerie. It definitely nails this claustrophobic paranoia that the character is feeling. You definitely feel that with him. And it's definitely a movie you want to see with a good sound system, whether it be at home or in a good theater. Unfortunately, the theater I saw it in was just okay. I felt like the sound in there was not as good as it should have been. It didn't do, any credit to the movie. So I look forward to watching it at home, or watching it in a better theatrical environment, because I thought overall the sound design was excellent. So bear that in mind. Also, considering the sound, two other points. One is a negative, one is a positive. I do think one negative of the film is the sound mixing, specifically when it comes to dialogue in some areas, is a little rough. And I've heard a couple other people talk about this, so I knew that going in. And after watching it, I completely agree. Especially towards the end, there's a couple scenes, actually a few scenes, where multiple voices are speaking, and it's almost impossible to understand the majority of what they're saying. So that could have been done a little bit better. Maybe it's something they can tweak when it releases, whether it be streaming or a physical release. That would be kind of cool if they could touch that up a little bit. But it's definitely something that when I watch it at home, which I hopefully will be able to, I'm going to turn subtitles on, because I want to know what was being said in those scenes. The other point, which is a positive, was the score. The score, which was done by a guy named Andrew Hulschultz, which I had not previously heard of. I do believe he does have some other credits with some other games. This guy is probably going to get a lot more work. This guy did an excellent job. I think you're probably going to be hearing his name connected to some other projects. He did an excellent job. Not only did he lift the moment when it needed to be lifted, but the music receded when it needed to be. It was not, it never felt like it was out of place. It never felt like it was present when it shouldn't have been. It did, honestly, the role of what music should do, which is amplify what is on scene. And I felt like it did that admirably. There was some really eerie moments. There was some action-packed moments where the music picked up and you were like, all right, let's go. Like, it really pulls you in. I thought he did an excellent job. By the way, the entire soundtrack is available online, so go check it out. It's on Spotify, and it is quite good. It's got a little bit of that sci-fi feel to it, maybe a little bit of synth, kind of like an eerie synth. But he's got some really good sort of mechanical sounds, metal grinding sounds. Like he just nailed it. Sometimes the music actually sounded like it was part of the world. So really well done. What else? So I thought acting-wise, I thought overall Mark did a pretty decent job. You know, in the beginning of the movie, you can definitely tell that he's trying to get a sense of the character. He's trying to get a feel for it. There's a couple moments early on that are a little awkward or don't quite land, maybe as they should have. But I feel like as it goes on, as you get it towards the latter half of the movie, he really settles in. And I do think his strength kind of came out in the emotional moments, in the heated moments, especially his anger. Funny enough, Mark does anger really well, which if you know anything about him, if you've watched him at all, you know that comes through in his Let's Plays. Sometimes he's fairly believable. And that comes through in the movie. His anger, his frustration, his fear. It definitely comes through in certain scenes, especially towards the end. In fact, the last act of this movie, I practically forgot I was watching Markiplier. Like he really does disappear into the role. Early on, you're definitely kind of in critique mode. Like you're watching how he handles certain lines and certain things, and you're like, how's this guy gonna do? And I was surprised how quickly that faded. Like I would say after the first half of the movie, I just was paying attention to the movie and I stopped paying attention to Mark because most of it was pretty believable. Now, is it perfect? No, but for a first big feature, I thought it was impressive what he did. I thought he did a pretty darn good job. And so, yeah, I thought his acting for 80% of the movie, 90% was believable and well done. Is he going to get better? Certainly. And I look forward to that because I think he's going to be involved in more projects. He's definitely got some talent. So acting I thought was solid. There was really only, I believe, one other actor that actually had face time, or significant face time, and she was also pretty good. So I thought overall the acting in the movie was solid. I thought the voice acting segments were also good. There's plenty of times where you only hear voices, and I thought those were believable. So there were very few moments where I was taken out of the experience or where I felt like the acting came up short. And honestly, that's kind of my entire feeling on the movie. I probably went in expecting to be a little more disappointed just because of the context of the situation, the fact that it's such low budget and it's indie produced and all that. And I came away from that movie thinking, damn, that was a really good movie. Like it's not perfect. It's by no means perfect, and I don't think Mark would say it's perfect. But it was really solid, like really solid, especially when you consider the context of how it was made. And I just came away surprised. Like not only did Mark pull it off, but some of the ways and the fashion in which he did pull it off, I was like, damn, that's actually really good. So if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend go watching it. If you have no idea what it is, there's some good stuff to enjoy here. There's some stuff that you'll still appreciate, but you might get a little bogged down in the middle because the pacing is another thing about this movie that's not great. But here's one thing I'll push back on. A common critique of this movie is that it would benefit by removing like 30 minutes. I disagree. I think maybe if you removed 10 to 15 minutes, you might have helped the pacing, but personally, I don't know if that solves my problem. And my problem with the movie is I actually wanted a little bit more exposition on Mark's character, on the character of the convict. I wanted to feel for him a little bit more. The character gives you a general sense of why he's in a situation that maybe he doesn't deserve to be in, but I kind of wanted a little more, man. I kind of wanted to feel just a little more emotion for that character. And then on top of that, there's this lore, this thing that happened in the universe called the Quiet Rapture. I wanted to know more about that. And I think part of what makes Iron Lung is there is a lot of vagueness. There is a lot of ambiguity. So I don't know that that would have necessarily served the film well to delve into those things, because I think that's part of what makes, the fear so tangible, is because there is so much unknown. You just frankly don't know what's happening. And I get all that, but I came away from this movie wanting more. And I feel like that's a good thing. I feel like that's a compliment towards the filmmakers, a compliment towards the story and the setting. I want to know more. I want to know more about the Quiet Rapture. I want to know what happened after. I almost want another movie. And I feel kind of slimy saying that, because I feel like we're in an age where everything gets a trilogy and everything gets a reboot. And it's like, can't we just have movies live by themselves anymore? It feels like there's very few solo movies almost. But I want to know more. It was an intriguing concept, the entire story, the setting, everything. And I thought it was pulled off really well. I really do. I think I wanted a little more exposition. I wanted a little more detail. And maybe that could have been maybe that time that these people are talking about, remove 20, 30 minutes. Maybe you could have used some of that time for a little more of that. But that would be the only thing I would say. I mean, yes, the pacing was slow, especially in the first half. But for me, I was there mostly for Mark. I mean, I was interested in Mark and interested in his endeavors as a movie maker. But yeah, once I settled back and I was just analyzing and watching the movie for itself, it is a little slow in the first half. So I think that's a fair critique that most people will probably have. But there is a moment, probably an hour and a half into the film, where I looked at my wife and I was like, oh shit. It was a cool moment. I don't know how else to frame it. I was grinning. I was like, what is happening right now? Let's go. Because I thought this movie was about to fall off the train tracks in a good way. We were about to go to Crazy Town. And I was 100% on board. I thought things were about to get loony, and I was like, let's go. Let's turn this thing upside down. This is about to get freaky. It ended up not quite going that direction. It kind of came back from that. But I thought it would have been a really interesting thing to explore. If you've seen the movie, you know probably exactly what I'm talking about. There's this really trippy moment. I'm not going to say anything more than that. But it does lean into a little bit of that. Towards the end, there's definitely... The most I'll say is there's definitely some cosmic horror influence here. The movie doesn't really expound on it a whole lot, but man, I kind of wish that I'd lean into it a little bit more. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Iron Lung. Overall, I thought it was extremely ambitious, and I think it pulled off most of what it was going for. I really do. I think it was, considering the context and how it was made, I think it was an admirable effort. I think it was impressive in many ways. It surprised me in many ways. Is it perfect? No, I don't think anyone's going to say it's perfect. But what it does do is it makes me excited for more projects. It makes me excited to see what Mark does next. And I think the same can be said for the score. I think the same can be said for the composer. I think some of the editing in this movie is top-notch. The cinematography, I mean, I hope a lot of these people that worked on this movie get more work, because I think there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of talent in this crew. And it's going to be exciting to see the reception as it goes on, as it continues to, hit more theaters and more people watch it, and hopefully comes home to streaming in some form or physical release. I definitely look forward to watching it again. So if you guys have seen it, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm definitely curious to hear your perspectives. But that is my take on Iron Lung.
Okay. I knew it! I knew it! I knew it! I knew you were gonna do that anyway. I knew it. I don't even know why I bothered. I don't know why I bothered. I don't know why I bothered with all that effort. Ugh. All that work.